Okay, let's create a new document. 640, 480, 72 file resolution. That's screen mode. Again, I'll emphasize that. If you were going to print it, it would be 300 dpi or higher, depending on the method used to print it. We're going to have it RGB. We're going to have it screen color. If you were going to print it in a lab that had actual inks, it would be CMYK, but we're going to keep it RGB. And our background will be white. There we go. There is our document. So right off the bat, we're just going to make a brush. So let me go to the ellipse tool, U. It's U on your keyboard. And it's the one down here. And it's a vector-based one. We're going to use a vector-based one. You can, to make our brush, you can make anything a brush. But for now, let's just make a simple brush. The ellipse tool, hold that shift down, the shift key, so that you have a perfect circle. So hold the shift down. Oh, I don't want it full of black. Or full of red. I want it full of black. There we go. Let me do that again. So I made my colors black over here. I'm going to turn the background off for now because I don't want that factored into my brush. I'm going to double click and bring up my layer styles, and to do that you go in this negative area of the layer and double click. And I want my opacity 50%, and then I want to put a stroke on it. I'm going to actually click on stroke and see how that turns blue. All these have different menus underneath them. So you want to bring up that menu. I want my size to be 10. And I want it to be inside, and I want the color to be black. So I clicked on stroke, size 10, position inside, color is black. I'm going to hit OK. Now I want to select that, and the easiest thing to do for me is to go over to the layers, and probably for you as well, and right here where that shape mask is, I'm going to hold the command key down on my keyboard, and I'm going to click on it. Command is the one by the space bar, and when I click on it, it automatically selects it. So command click on this layer right here, the shape layer, and it's automatically selected. I'm going to go to edit, and define brush does not come up. What you might need to do is unlock this background layer and just double click on it, hit OK, and it'll unlock. Let me turn it back off, and now we say edit, define brush. So if you can't define your brush, double click your background layer because it's locked, and then hit OK and turn the background layer back off. So define brush, we'll give it a name, new brush, or whatever you want to name it. You can name it Alfred if you'd like. Maybe we'll name it Alfred. So we've made Alfred the brush. Hooray. We no longer need this layer, so let's just toss it in the garbage. I still have a selection. I don't want that. I'm going to hit Command D. And again, the Command key is the one by the space bar. It says Command on it. Command D to deselect. And I'm going to fill this with color. Double click on my foreground color. This one here is the foreground color. I'm going to type in 262626. It's not quite black, and that's what we want. I'm going to grab the paint bucket, so you can hit G on your keyboard. If the gradient comes up, just click and drag. Anytime you see that little triangle in the lower right hand corner of a tool, that means there's more stuff underneath it. So I'll just click and fill it, and now I will drag it down in my layers to this little page down here that's right by the garbage can and copy it. So let me do that again. You just click on the layer in your layers, drag it down to the little page that's right by the garbage can, and it copies it. So we're going to add another effect to it, to this layer. So you can double click in this negative area. You can also go down here. The effects are down here. I'm just going to double click there. I want a gradient overlay. And we're going to set our blend mode to overlay. And let's choose a gradient. You can really choose any gradient, so if I choose that, you know, that's kind of dark, but I can edit it. All I have to do is double click on there, and here's all the colors. So for instance, that blue is pretty dark. Let me lighten it up. Trying to make it a little brighter. Okay, that looks pretty bright. And the stripes are going straight across. I think that I will angle them. And I will hit OK. So now we have 2 layers of the 262626. One has a gradient overlay set to it. And if you don't like your gradient, you can go double click and go back to it. And you can change it. Make sure this blend mode is overlay. That's something a lot of people seem to be missing. Now you can put layers in folders, and you can apply, you know, a ink effect to all of them. So we're going to go down here at the bottom of our layers, and if we count from the right in, 1, 2, 3, there is our folder, and it creates a new group. We'll click on our little folder. There we go. We are going to set the blending mode to color dodge. Okay, now let's add some layers into that folder. So make sure your folder is color dodge. Again, people are missing that. So 1, 2, 3. I just clicked 3 layers right here. We want to see those little transparency squares. Those are important. Let's make our ink, our foreground color white. So you can switch them with this little arrow here. So it's white, and let's click our paintbrush, and let's choose our brush we just made. It's going to be the last one. There's my brush, and I'm going to choose this bottom layer, and you know, that's not really what I want. I want to manipulate this brush. So I'm going to go Window, Brush, Presets. Oops, there we go. Window, Brush. I want this window here. Window, Brush. I want it to be in brush tip shape is how big it is. Under Shape Dynamics, click right on it. Again, just like earlier, you have to click right on it, and you're going to get lots of parameters you can control. Size, jitter. Well, if something's jittery, it's jumping around. So we want the size to jump around. So put that up to 100%. Don't put the minimum diameter up to 100%. Because it's a percentage scale, so 0 is tiny and nothing, and 100% is the size it is currently. So if you put it 100%, it is not going to change size at all. So you leave minimum diameter at 0. Angle jitter, you won't see it change the angle because it's a perfect circle. Roundness, let's not change that, but I'll just show you what it does. It makes some of them, you know, flatten out and stuff. Let's just leave it. Leave that off. Scattering, this throws them all around, and notice this didn't update because I haven't clicked on scattering yet. Now, there we go. I'm clicking on scattering. So we can throw them really far or not as far. This little updating window is showing you what's happening. I don't want to spread them out too far, but I do want them to spread out. So 214 looks good to me. You can choose whatever looks good to you. Count. We can have them scatter and multiply. So you can see that turns into a big black block. So I'm just going to maybe do it 3. And count jitter means, you know, it might do more than 3 or less than 3. You can move that up a little if you'd like. Under transfer, opacity jitter. If you put up 100%, some of them will be totally opaque, some will be partially opaque. I think this is kind of a fun one, so I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to leave flow jitter alone. There's other things in here too. These are the ones I want to use. So let me go back to my layers. I have white chosen for my foreground color. Wow, my brush is kind of large. So let's simply go to your keyboard, go to the letter P, and to the right of your letter P is the brackets, and if you hit the right one, it'll make your brush bigger and the left one will make it smaller on the fly. So I'm on this layer 1, this bottom layer, so I'll just, there we go. That's real pretty. I'm going to go to layer 2. I'm going to hit the left bracket and make this a little smaller. There we go, that's nice. And then layer 3, even smaller. Alright, now some of these need to look like they're receding, so we need to blur them. And our blur tools are under filter, so filter, blur. You can choose Gaussian, that kind of just makes it look more blurry overall. Or more motion blur. They're both pretty fun. You can try any other blurs in here too you'd like. I'm going to go with the motion blur. And let me actually turn all these other layers off so you can see what happens. Filter, blur, motion blur. And the bigger this number, of course, the more the more it'll blur until it just looks, you know, like that. And you can change the angle. I think I'll do that. So that's pretty blurred. Let's put our next layer back on. And I'm going to go back to filter, blur, motion blur. And it's going to come up with the same amount of blur. I'll pull it back because I kind of want these to be somewhat readable. Okay, so that's not too bad. And then last, this I don't want to be blurred at all. Now this is pretty bright, so I'm going to pull the opacity down on some of these layers so it's not blasted out. You can even pull it down on your main layer. You could also, if you want, make another layer. And use your brush to throw in some darker circles. So there you go. I'll show what those, you can kind of see them, I don't know. Depending on the resolution of your screen, you may or may not be able to. If I put this behind them, you can. Let me move the opacity up. There we go. Nicer. Okay. Lots of fun depth and stuff. So that's the basic bokeh tutorial I showed you guys. There's other things you can do. You could apply filters to any of these layers and see what happens. So if I wanted to filter the dark layer, I could say film grain. Add a bunch of film grain to the dark layer. And it's kind of fun. It's a little overwhelming, but if I move it, woo! All right. Well, that's a little bit too much. But I could go in and blur it again. So you can add filters to each of these. Ooh, there we go. That's better. Layers. You could add color. If you use color, always make sure that you don't just paint solid color. Let me make, now you'll be stopped from it because this is set to a color dodge. So I'm making a layer above and I can add some color. So I got some circles that are in color. And you can still change parameters within here. So I could set that to multiply instead. So you can do an infinite amount of things. Alright, so you've got your, let's just explain this. You have your bottom layer, which is not quite black. The next layer above it is that same color, and it has the gradient overlay, which you have set to overlay, and you've put your gradient in there and your angle in there. You then made a folder, You set that folder to color dodge. You created your new layers. You chose your paintbrush and you made sure you had white. And you went to your brush and you changed the, you went to your brush and you changed it so you changed the shape dynamics, scattering, opacity, leaf smoothing on, and then you filled each one of these layers with the shapes from your brush, and you blurred them more, a little less, and not at all to make this effect. I'm going to show you another thing. You can make a brush out of anything. So I'm going to go up here to just our regular marquee tool, which is M on the keyboard. I'm going to choose a circle, and I'm going to hold that shift down, keep it nice and perfect, and I'll move it to where I think I like that. And edit, define brush preset. Looky there. Alright, and you can see that looks like the brush, so my new brush. And I'll make a new layer. Let me turn this all off. Ooh. Oh, what have I done? New layer. Alright, blank layer. There we go. And let me choose that new brush. I haven't changed any of the brush presets. Notice they're back to their defaults. There. It's painting back on what I just did. Turn that layer off. Make a new layer. And again, I can go in, I can change my shape dynamics, the size, I can make it scatter, I can make it partially opaque, so there we go.